I really hope as an artist you think of yourself as not just as an artist, but someone who is a successful entrepreneur. This video is all about pricing your art. And there's different ways of pricing art. So this is not the best way to price your art, but it's a way to price your art, particularly if you're finding it takes you 20 to 30 or more hours to do a painting or whatever your creative activity is. I'm talking particularly about my method of pricing art by the hour. So how long does it take? And I know some folks go, customers don't care how long it takes you to do a painting. I know they say that, but in fact that's not true. On a recent arts trail, probably about 25% of those I spoke to asked me, well, how long did it take you to do that? So I know that some are very interested in the length of time, and some actually put a value. The longer it took, the more valuable it is in their mind. So I have this workbook here that I shared in my last video. The last video was all about art productivity. How many paintings can you do in a year? I had quite a discussion about productivity, producing art, and that for focus work, amazingly, the average number of hours per worker for focus work, of which art is focus work, is typically 3 hours per day. And if you haven't, if you doubt that and you didn't see the first video, please go and watch that. Anyway, so that came to 9 hours per week. 9 times 40 is 360 hours available for me to do my art. And I won't go into the breakdown of what that, by painting type, what that would come to, but it was 27 paintings I felt I could do per annum. And that's not a bad figure actually. There was a website I looked at that was talking about 25 being an average number of paintings for an artist per year. So I was in the ballpark, so that's kind of nice. All right, so 27, and 27 paintings would take me 359 hours of work to do for the year. So that's just the time it's taken. So how much does it cost then? How much does it cost me to do those 27 paintings? How much does it cost you per year? So before you've sold anything, your art is already costing you. You're producing, putting all your inputs in, you're getting your output as your art, and then you've got to convert that into sales, right? So that you can carry on doing your art. So the first thing I look at is materials. So what's required in order, what are my inputs for my art? And I'm a pastelist, and so I need paper to begin with. Now, all these prices are in New Zealand dollars. Don't worry about the New Zealand dollars. It's the principle that matters. All right, so if you're in the UK or you're in the US, your prices will vary, but you'll understand what I'm talking about of making sure everything is accounted for. And the biggest cost though for a pastel painting is the framing. So I can get one online and assemble it myself, or for a very similar cost I can take it to a framer and get it done there. But that's the biggest cost for me, is framing. And whatever your art medium, you'll have something which is your biggest cost as well. Framing, if you are doing framing and not just just your canvas board, it is a cost, right? And there'll be shipping, and there might be some other costs. So I add all those up. I'm trying to track, just for doing a painting, what are the materials required for that painting and to finish it, so it's ready for sale. Okay, so not just sitting there. And there is a thing that I can sell my pastels unframed and ship them out, but then there'll be a shipping cost, and the shipping cost, oddly, particularly for overseas, is pretty much the same as the framing cost. So I haven't worried too much about that. And this shipping cost I'm mentioning in here is stuff from couriers to me, so sending frames or papers and pastels. Alright, so once you add all that up, that may be your total cost. It's a little different for me because I run my art as a business through my company, and my company is registered for what we call in New Zealand Goods and Services Tax, GST, and so I'm able to claim for all my material costs that I purchased to make a painting. Whatever tax is on that, whatever sales tax, I can claim that back. So that means I will have only spent $388. When I say only spent, you think a pastel painting, oh, you've only got some pastels and some paper, that's really cheap. No, that's not how it is. If you want to frame them, they're going to go up in cost. So now we're into, we've worked out our material costs, but they're not our only costs. You've got your sales costs, and often you'll have these as fixed costs, and you need to include the price of these into your art, because you wouldn't have these costs if you weren't doing your art, so they're going to go into your painting costs, or they should. Otherwise you're actually losing this cost on every painting if you haven't accounted for it. Most artists will have a website, Shopify, Squarespace, a WordPress one, whatever you've got, and you'll have an annual cost for that. Advertising. I had a look at what is the average amount artists are spending on advertising, and it's about 10 to 15% of an artist's annual income. The annual income in the US for an artist is somewhere between $35,000 and $50,000. So 10% would mean $3,500 to $5,000 being spent on advertising. It's not something I'm doing myself at the moment, that's why it's just set to zero. And marketing, now this could cover a number of things, but particularly it may cover your social media usage, how you're spending your time, whether you're doing it yourself or you've hired a social media manager, virtual assistant, whatever you like to call them, to look after your social media. And you might go, oh, what a waste of money that would be. Well, let's just hold that thought, we'll come back to it. Your studio costs. You've got to have somewhere to do your art, right? Whether it's the shed down the garden, or it's a room in your house, or wherever it is, it will be costing you money and power, and possibly rent or your rates. I know for myself, for having run a business from home for a long time, in my country we're allowed to claim 10% of our home costs for our business. So for me that's $800 a year that I can claim on having my studio at home. And then there's internet costs. Might include your phone costs as well in there, whatever your tech costs are to keep your business running. Now these are all taxable costs, all right, and that's why you've got to be tracking them. Why I recommend you track them, because you want to claim this off your tax at the end of the year, and so you've got some recovery. You don't get the full amount back, but if you earn $20,000 in sales from your art and you had $2,000 of sales expenses, you'll only get taxed on $18,000. Right, so it's worth tracking these and claiming them as a taxable expense. Meanwhile, you do need to put them factor it into the price of your paintings. Now I've got a little section here, non-taxable hidden costs, and this is really this is just informative. You can't claim this back, but you can control how much it's costing you, and it's why you might consider actually having someone do marketing for you. So I've put an hourly rate in. What would I be prepared to pay myself to spend time updating my social media, letting people know what I'm painting on, having conversations with people during the week, doing videos on YouTube? What would I be viewing as a reasonable wage to do that per hour? Well, I've put it down as $30 here, but you could have whatever you wanted. And then how many hours per week are you going to spend on social media? How many hours per week? Well, I suspect I'm around 14 hours per week on social media. Maybe a little bit less, sometimes more. I've really tried to control it. It got really out of hand over the pandemic. But you'll see that, if you're spending 2 hours a day on social media and you had to pay yourself, it's $20,000 a year. That's a huge cost. You better be getting a return on that marketing, right? So even if you just spend an hour a day, it's still nearly $11,000. So think about your social media. You need it to sell, but it can make sense to actually employ someone else to manage a chunk of that, and think about the time you're spending on it. Anyway, we're not going to include social media cost from here in the cost of our painting. Otherwise our paintings would be far too expensive. But we are going to include this cost here of $2,000, and it's a very simple formula for this. I could do 27 paintings for the year, so I take my cost of selling and I just spread that across the 27 evenly. It's going to cost the same amount to sell a large painting as it will for a small one. You've got the same infrastructure. You've got a studio, you've got your internet costs, you've got your website. It takes the same amount across every painting to sell, or to not sell any of them, and then it's, wow, that was a sad year when you don't sell anything. Right, so how do we price the art? We are going to look at a lot of numbers. So sorry about that. Here comes a wall of numbers. We only start by looking at this top line to begin with, where it starts $359 and then $23.50. You see that? $359. This $359 is exactly the number that comes from the art output. How many hours per year are you able to do on actually producing art? Not the wasting around time, direct, you're working, you're focused, you're producing output. You're not sitting there having a coffee, this is just your pure art time. So for me it's $359. Now I've split this across different ways, so I just want to see personally for myself all the different options and how much a piece of art would change in cost. So in cost, not to sell yet, just in cost. How much does this painting cost me? So in New Zealand, we have what's called the minimum wage. This is businesses sort of government mandated. They must pay a minimum wage. And it's $23.50, and you might go, well, that seems quite good. But our cost of living here is pretty shocking in New Zealand. That's why so many Kiwis are fleeing overseas. It seems to be our greatest export. Used to be milk and wool, and now it seems to be sending Kiwis to do jobs overseas. So we have a minimum wage, and if I was on a minimum wage, that $359 times that minimum wage, that's how much it would cost me, nearly $8,500, to do those paintings. right? $8,500 to do those paintings. I haven't sold anything yet. That's how much it's cost me. We have a living wage. It's not even worth talking about that because it's barely any different from the minimum wage. But the retail wage is about $30 on average for Kiwis. So minimum wage is someone working in a supermarket. A retail wage is someone working in a department store, a bookshop, an art gallery. All right, so nearly $11,000 per year is what I'd need to pay myself. That's my cost for spending time on that art. The finance wage, I go, $60 now. That sounds a bit better. That is for people working in banking, insurance, sometimes IT. Sometimes IT workers are paid a bit more. And the final one is consulting rate. Well, I run my own business as a consultant, and this is how much money I'm leaving on the table if I go painting instead of consulting. So, why are you painting, David? Sometimes I ask myself that, but painting is where my heart is, right? And I'm at a stage in my life where I want to get good at painting, and ideally I want to end up earning this amount, as it were, per hour for my art to get good enough so that's what my paintings are selling for. And it's totally possible. So what we're going to do is we'll work on this living wage, because I find this quite useful. This is kind of like absolute beginner. So minimum wage would be absolute beginner, and I've sold paintings for less than minimum wage. So I don't know how I survive. So it's less than minimum wage, but as you get better and better at your art, then your prices should be going up. And if you use the hourly rate, there's two things that are going to happen though. As you get better and better at your art, the amount of time it takes to do your art will reduce. You know the shortcuts. Your quality is so much better. It naturally will happen unless you keep challenging yourself. So at the moment, my art continues to sort of take the same amount of time because every painting I do is harder than the last one. I keep challenging myself to do better. So, but if you're doing the same subject over and over again, and no shame in that, if you're making money, that's fantastic. If you're doing the same sort of subject over and over again, eventually you'll saturate your market and people I've got enough of those things. So that becomes a problem, but you'll be pricing your work differently from this. So I'm going to say I'm at sort of a living wage stage for my art at the moment, and we're going to see if this comes about right for the size of the paintings I'm doing. So here we go. Let's start on this line here, row 10, and we're just going to be looking at, we'll just blank these out so that you can just see these ones, at least in these columns. So 875, that's the wage I should be paying myself. That's the cost of doing a painting that took me 35 hours. Right, 875. Now I need to add my materials. Do you remember the material cost? They were over here, and my material costs mainly included framing. That's a bit sad, but if I want to sell this piece, it's going to need a frame. So we're going to have to add this $388. Suddenly my painting, the cost of doing that painting has gone up. It's gone up to nearly $1,300. But wait, there's more. We've got a sales cost. Remember I mentioned the sales cost? The sales cost was, well, we've got a website, we've got a studio, we've got an internet, we might be doing advertising as well. So we've got to add that. Fortunately, the $2,000 which is the year's sales cost, divided by 27 paintings, is only $74. So we add that to a large one. Well, a large one is going to be $1,300. That's the cost, right? Wait, there's more. If you're running a business, and I really hope as an artist you think of yourself as not just as an artist, but someone who is a successful entrepreneur, right? You're producing a great product. People want it and they're buying it. View yourself as a business. Now, every business needs to make a profit, not just cover the costs, not just pay the wages, but to make a profit, because once you're making a profit, you're now able to reinvest that back into your business. And it's your profit that you may use for advertising, which then sells more of your paintings. Okay? So, gross profit. What should the business be making as profit? Only you can decide that. But a lot of businesses actually like 30%. 30% is profit. That's a reasonable amount to be making on top of your costs. Now 30% is actually a really good amount to put in there. So let's change this to 30%. And why is 30% a good amount? Because if you then put this piece of art into an exhibition or to a gallery, what are they going to charge you? Well, they'll charge you commission. And how much will that commission be per painting? Well, the commission's likely to be 25 to 40% of your art cost. Well, if you've got the gross profit there, and you go, well, someone else is now doing the selling, so I don't have to worry too much about that. Although if you're at an exhibition, you'll probably have to be there as well and still be your own salesperson. But you don't feel so hurt when that money disappears on the sale of your painting. Because if it's 25% of your painting, that means if you sell 4 paintings, one of those was a freebie, because the exhibition is going to take that for their profit. So get used to putting in a gross profit margin. Say what you want to make on your work. But wait, there's more pain. So most countries will have a sales tax. So in New Zealand it's called Goods and Services Tax, GST, and ours is set at 15%, but only for New Zealanders. So if I sell a painting to a New Zealander, I have to give the government, or the Inland Revenue Department, 15% of that sale. That's the GST component. So I factor that into my prices all the time. But if I sell the same painting, I've got 2 people wanting it, one from overseas and one in New Zealand. If I sell it to the one overseas, they don't get charged that 15% sales tax. In fact, that 15% can go towards the shipping costs, so that's really helpful. But either way, you're going to have some additional costs, whether it's your sales tax within the country you're in, or a shipping cost. So there we go. So that means that the cost of my painting is $1,900. Well, it's $2,000. If I didn't have a gross profit margin, we'll just put that to 0. It would be $1,500. And intuitively, that's what these paintings behind me had been priced at in my last exhibition. $1,500. Notice they're still with me. They didn't sell. And that leads us to a different problem. and that's pricing according to your market. So if you go to an art exhibition, so we had a local arts trail recently that these were in, and I knew that the people coming on that arts trail, the majority of them would only have a certain budget, and I had to decide whether I was going to discount my artwork in order to move it across, move it on. And yes, I sold 3 paintings, but at a loss to me. I was doing it at let's see, I was probably doing it at about $5 an hour. So that's pretty tough. You sell your stuff, but you're doing it for nothing. So why are artists struggling so often? Well, I believe there's a number of reasons why. It's not just the art market, but in fact, they're doing it at a loss because they're not recovering the full cost of their art. They're just going, oh, I think this painting, I've seen paintings sell for $400. I should put this painting at $400. But how much did the materials cost? How much was the sales cost? Did you include your sales tax? Did you put a gross profit margin on so that you can reinvest that into yourself, whether it's a training course or some advertising? You need to learn to price our art accordingly. So if this is helpful for you, for pricing your work by an hourly rate, please let me know in the comments. If you didn't understand it and there's something about it that was unclear, I know looking at spreadsheets and numbers, you're trying to step inside someone else's thinking, and that can be a bit hard, but it's very simple. Let's just go through the process one more time. You just need to know, how many paintings can you do per year? Not some imaginary number, but work it out with a bit of math. What can you realistically achieve per year? And then work out realistically, what are your costs per year, per painting? All right, per painting. What's it costing you to do each piece of work? And then work out, what's my annual costs for sales? So I haven't even sold anything, but these are the things that I've got to spend money on, regardless of whether I'm selling or not. And then just divide that by the number of paintings you're going to do. That's going to be your sales costs per painting. Don't forget to then work out, are you going to do this by a wage? Or you might just go, well, it only took me an hour and I don't want to talk about how long it takes. I believe this painting's worth $500. Great. Just make sure that you look at your costs and that you're not shortchanging yourself, and that if you were to do an hourly rate, you're not doing it for less than a minimum wage. You're better than that, right? Yeah, of course you are. So I hope this is helpful. I'll be doing some more videos about working out how to not get ripped off as an artist, how not to leave money behind on the table, but you actually recover all your costs, you load it onto your art, you sell your art, you make a living. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.